delusional, and disingenuous. He stands as a beacon of truth. He is Abuki Cabal. You are listening to Abuki Cabal.
Welcome to the Abuki Cabal Show.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the show. If you take a moment to hit that like, share, and subscribe button, I'd appreciate it. Again, the algorithm is not being kind to me and probably to a lot of other people. But if you could, check in on me every now and then, and like I said, just hit that button, the notification button every time you come in to make sure that it's working properly. Then hopefully you'll get notified when I put new content. But let's get on with the show. Today I'm going to talk about our educational system here, our higher educational system, and some of the discussion that we've had as of late concerning our educational system. I know everybody's been talking about Ebony K. Williams and her commentary about black men not trying hard enough and not having aspirations and dreams of ownership and whatnot, and slavery and all these other things that she's trying to throw into the mix to sell her book, and how she's really rooting for the black man. So I wanted to touch on a few of these things that it seems like she skipped over in her time trying to achieve her higher education goals. This article, amongst a few that I've touched on over the last couple of days, trying to research for this, basically touches on some of the problems that this country and a couple of other countries are having with regard to PhD training, master's degree programs, as well as regular undergraduate studies. And we're starting to see elevated cost, unnecessary degrees, useless degrees, and people graduating from these programs and not necessarily being able to recoup the cost of these so-called educations. And if you don't choose wisely, you can get caught up into a loop of endless debt. And a lot of black women have been the victims of this scamming that's been going on. And it didn't always start out that way. It used to be to where it wasn't as expensive to go to college as it is now. But once the federal government started getting into the business of making sure that those loans would be backed with federal money, then the banks started to make sure that those loans were easily accessible to everyone, and thus basically they gave them out to anybody that they could, as many people as they could, and they made money off of them. So whether you could pay or you didn't pay, they made money. Whether they said they made money or not, they made money. And here we are now, with people saying that they need loan forgiveness, and everybody's screaming, no loan forgiveness. And most of the people who are saying no loan forgiveness didn't have to pay the extraordinary amounts that the young people are having to pay now. Even when I was in school, the amounts that we had to pay were ridiculous for the quality of education that we were getting. The things that we had to put up with were amazing, and not in a good way. So, without further ado, we'll go ahead and touch on some of this. So, this article talks about PhD training is no longer fit for purpose. It needs reform now. If researchers are to meet society's expectations, their training and mentoring must escape the 19th century. So, in short, they're using antiquated, old systems to try to teach new students who don't learn the same ways. Even though we've learned so much about human beings, we're still teaching as if we're still in the early 1900s, where people were still wearing, in castles and, running around in armor and stuff. So, let's take a look at these articles. Well, first of these articles. Okay. All right. There you see everybody in their caps and gowns. See, they don't really get dressed up like we do here. This is graduation day, a PhD for PhD scholars in the University of Bologna, Italy. Doctoral assessment in most countries is largely unchanged since the 19th century. Okay, gives credit to the photographer. Okay, these days there's barely a world leader who doesn't talk up science. Prime Minister Narendra Modi was the star turn at the annual Indian Science Congress held this month in Nagpur, where he exhorted the nation's research to do the science needed to make India self-reliant. At last October's landmark Communist Party Congress, Chinese Premier Xi Jinping set out his vision of how science and innovation could drive growth. And last August, U.S. President Joe Biden signed the CHIPS and Science Act, which unlocks U.S. $13.2 billion for semiconductor research and workforce development in a bid to maintain the country's technological primacy. In each case, the message to researchers is crystal clear. Leaders see science as essential to the nation's prosperity, well-being, and, of course, competitiveness. So is research fit for the challenge of advancing, refining, and critiquing these goals? Not exactly. It won't be until there is a fundamental reform to the gateway to a research career, PhD training. Training in trouble. As Nature and other publications have reported persistently, PhD training worldwide has been in trouble for some time. Surging inflation has eroded the already meager value of student stipends in most countries, creating a cost of living crisis. Early career researchers constantly report concerns about a chronic lack of support and poor quality of supervision, with senior researchers rarely trained in mentorship. Racism and discrimination are systemic in academic culture in many places. Furthermore, PhD candidates are inadequately prepared for the cross-disciplinary working and large teams that characterize cutting-edge science today. This is especially true for careers outside academic research, where the overwhelming where the overwhelmingly majority of PhD candidates will be heading. It is not all bad. Universities in a small number of high-income countries have reformed or are reforming PhD assessment. But in most places, and especially in low and middle-income countries, a candidate's work is still evaluated using a single-authored dissertation. This is defended before a scholarly panel, in which is still sometimes called a viva voce, with living voice in Latin, a nod to its 19th century origins. And in many countries, the candidates must publish in a journal before they get a PhD, something that critics say could fuel predatory publishing. Okay. Alrighty. The system strains have become more obvious because the number of people doing PhD training has been rising sharply, according to a 2022 book, Towards a Global Core Value System in Doctoral Education, available as an opening access PDF. See, go, Nature. There's the link. The number of PhDs awarded in China more than doubled from 23,400 in 2004 to 55,011 in 2016 and reached around 60,000 in 2019. India's numbers increased from 17,000 to 850 to 17,850 in 2004 to 25,095 in 2016. U.S. figures climbed from 48,500 to 69,525 over the same period. Okay, and it says see the rise in PhDs. Okay, I'm going to stop there for a second. So then, here as of late, Gigi, Green Gorilla, if you don't know his channel, please, go over and check his channel out. And Dr. T.S. Johnson's channel, and also Dr. Ronald Neal's channel, BGS's channel, all of which have been talking about issues with higher education and how basically there is also internal fighting that's going on with regard to feminists basically taking over these spaces, and the quality of scientific research and the direction of scientific research being, and also the finances that were being directed towards certain research are now being diverted to research that is more catered towards the direction of the present agendas and the directions that we are seeing society headed right now. And this would explain how some of our institutions basically just rolled over so easily for these new nuanced ideals, i.e., transgenders, LGBTQ agendas, feminist agendas, without barely any scientific pushback or research to back up any of the claims. And basically you have male PhDs that are having to fight for funding and space, and even having to justify their existence. Whereas there aren't as many men graduating into these spaces. So you have extreme numbers of women coming into these spaces and pushing these guys out. And this has been happening over the course of years, and it's getting worse. Some of these, well, you'll see as this article goes on how it is talking about. Well, it grazed over some of the discrimination that people suffer, our people suffer in these programs, which means that less of us are represented in these programs. Less of our ideas are being represented in these programs, which basically shows up in pretty much the status quo being maintained. I remember when I was an undergraduate and, reading books about the intelligence of human beings and the search for the missing link, and how for so long, PhDs throughout Europe were basically cutting off the heads of young black men throughout the African continent, and professing that they were somehow some missing link, or some sort of humans that were forgotten by time. And these specimens are still strewn throughout Europe to this day. And if our ideas and our pushback is not represented, then who's going to go in and basically push down the notions that we aren't intelligent, and that we can't perform, and that we don't have ideas that should be represented? Not to say that there shouldn't be, women represented, but these women should think in a scientific fashion. They should come at problems in a way that is neutral, and that any scientist should be able to come at a problem and work that problem out. And whatever the science shows is what they present, not whatever their feelings are about what it should be, or any of that. And if there is something that the science doesn't support, you don't publish it. You can't publish it because it will not survive the peer review process. So that is the whole reason for the dissertation and the PhD process, as far as trying to get your work published, is to teach you how to go about researching and proving, whatever it is that you are claiming. And if you can't prove it, you can't publish it. Yeah. So that's part of the process. And that would have stopped a lot of what was going on right now. So that's how the system, if it is kept the way that it's supposed to be, will keep out things that will contaminate it and make it a less viable process. Okay. All right. So here we have a chart here that shows the rise of the PhDs from 2004 to 2016 in, multiple countries. I'll let you take a look at that. And you see the steady rise from countries from Brazil, China, Germany, India, Japan, Mexico, Russia, South Africa, South Korea, United Kingdom, United States. Okay. All right. So here's the doctorate update. Too often, PhD training is still, at least conceptually, organized as it was after its development in and subsequent export from mid-19th century Germany. At that time, young scholars were attached to individual professors in a master-apprentice relationship with the objective of safeguarding and advancing knowledge in individual disciplines. That cannot continue. If the next generation of scholars is to meet society's demand, there needs to be a revolution in the organization and funding of PhD training. And it must be on a similar scale to the shakeup that took place when school and university education stopped being a privilege enjoyed by relatively small numbers of people, those with wealth or those training for occupations such as politics, religion, or teaching. So what they're saying is basically only the privileged few. And so what they're going to do is they're going to make the PhD process open to everybody, but everybody shouldn't be in the PhD process. This is going to cause a lot of problems. I think Gigi's been talking about that some over the last couple of weeks. And, if you start having, people who who don't have the proper mindset in the PhD arena, it's going to cause problems. And this isn't my my arena. So I hope that they will expound upon these articles, and basically, tell me more about this as well. I have my own feelings about it, which I will go through here, but I'm definitely interested in finding out from the scholars in the space how they feel about the premise of these articles that I found. Okay, so alrighty, so they are going to try to basically do the same thing with the PhD programs that they're doing with undergraduate. Everybody goes, everybody gets a trophy, which I think is not a good thing. We're starting to see that now. I'm seeing that, even in healthcare, I'm starting to see damn near everybody going to get their PhD. Seeing all kinds of nurses, everybody just going to get a PhD, and, health this or health that. They don't even, they have no drive for it, no passion for it. They're just going to get a PhD. Who knows whether they'll use it? They're not going to, probably, I know some that have never published. They're not doing anything with it. They're just getting a PhD. And mostly it's just for money. It's not to advance the science or anything of that nature. It's just for money. So, how is that moving the needle for humanity? Which I think is what science is all about, what the PhD program, what it was about. It was about, pushing science forward, moving thought and human capabilities forward, and not pushing us in directions just for the sake of going in different directions, which I see a lot of that happening now. We're making claims that have no scientific background. We're going in directions that have, we're even changing diagnosis, changing scientific observations, and all kinds of things that have years of scientific background based on just whims now. Whims of the public, people who don't know anything, politicians who have no background, in science whatsoever. They're just trying to please the public, for whatever reason that may be. I'm sure if we dug deeper, we would be able to, tease out why this is, and I'm sure it's money. It always is. It's always some consumer benefit. These people spend so much money, so let's welcome them into the fold or whatever the case may be. And it's looking like that may be what it is. But some people just don't need to be allowed to advance further into the process. I just stand on that. Okay. Let's see where I dropped off here. Okay, religion and teaching as education expanded to be open to everyone, at least in theory. It was no longer feasible to offer tuition in small groups where one person did most of the teaching with little or no training. Countries introduced subject specialists as teachers. They limited class sizes, experimented with new educational technologies, collaborated on quality assurance measures, and drew on educational research to understand how students learn in different ways. Well, seems like all of that's going out the window, because here we see clearly that men and boys are learning at different in different ways, and basically we're just sacrificing them and pouring all of the resources into women, and boys are falling farther and farther behind. Yet the cry is, don't piss off the women, and let's not say the wrong things, and make it look like we're going to take something away from the women in order to, save the boys, because that's the patriarchy, but wherever there's a problem, logically, is where you put the resources. Okay. That's not to say that we starve the women out to the point to where they become a problem. No, they don't need resources if they're doing fine. You keep them at a resource level to where it maintains where they are, and you reallocate resources to where you start to do things differently for the boys and the men, and make sure that we do things differently so that their educational levels start to change. And we have to do that, because we're going to need these men in this new age. We're going to need them with regard to this new AI age, with regard to defense posturing that's going on here that shows things that are going to be happening in the future. We need that. This is going to be a thinking man's game, but not only a thinking man's game, you're still going to have to hold territory. And if you hold territory, you're going to have boots on the ground, boots on the ground and technology on the ground that's able to hold that territory. Not to mention people who are able to understand the technology, implement the technology, and be able to continue to work on new technologies to continue to move our country forward, as well as humanity forward into what's going on. Things are moving faster and faster into the future. What we're thinking about now is not what we're going to be thinking about 10 years from now, maybe 5 years from now. And unfortunately, men are going to have to be a part of that. We're going to have to stop acting like, somehow men are useless now, and, we're not going to have to add them into the equation. So somehow somebody's going to have to figure out that problem, instead of acting like it's misogynistic to even discuss the problems that we face socially now. Okay. See. All right. The editors and contributors of Towards a Global Core Value System in Doctoral Education, who are all experts in higher education, Research, policy, or practice provides snapshots of the state of play in various countries, including all important examples of innovation in PhD training. Some candidates are instructed in cohorts with more than one supervisor so that students are less isolated and better protected if a relationship with a single supervisor goes bad. Okay, this is something that should have been in place already. If you fall out with one professor, there should be things in place to protect a student from total failure if there's some type of interpersonal problem that happens, and that happens. That happens even at an undergraduate level. There are stories out here. People are even afraid to even share those stories because of the fallout. But these stories happen. They happen to women. They happen to men too, where, their whole academic careers are destroyed because of one person, So, that still should be something that should be looked into. Okay. All right. Some take additional courses of study or have their research progress assessed periodically. The kind of guided approach that happens in education more broadly. Reforming PhD training will be like turning a tanker. It will be slow. It will require planning and resources, but the end result must be a transformation on a massive scale, just as happened when primary, secondary, and university education was reformed. If our leaders want scientists to work harder for society, they in turn need to work with research to ensure that PhD training finally exits the 19th century and joins the 21st. Okay? All right. Okay. Nice article. So I'm going to go to, there's another article here where we talk about things that we always talk about. Here's a 29-year-old teacher with 4 degrees who wants to join the Great Resignation because she's tired of working way above her paycheck. So this goes into what I was talking about, where a person goes out and, we talk about this all the time. Why in God's name would anybody go out and get 4 degrees? Okay. But women do it all the time because they like trinkets. They like, like those things that show status. I guess it's like shoes or something, but let's touch on this and see what she says. All right. She says, it felt like a calling. Nita's parents are both teachers in her home country of France. Her brother is a teacher back home too. Her aunts, uncles, even her husband's father is a teacher. It's insane, she tells Fortune. There was a familial pressure to become a teacher, to say the least, but Nina, 29, says she is passionate about teaching and loves kids. She works so hard to educate. She taught for 2 years in France and has been an English language arts teacher in Arizona high school since the pandemic started. But she's not sure she can do it much longer. Like many workers in the waning days of the pandemic, especially teachers, she's seeking a career change, but she's not entirely sure where to begin. I just don't want to be a teacher. Nina, a pseudonym Fortune is using to protect her privacy, recently wrote in a career guidance subreddit. But I've been in education for so long that I don't feel like I'm qualified enough to do anything remotely interesting, even though I have the fire and willingness to work hard. The pandemic, which brought about 2 years of debating how and what to teach kids, fueled a teacher shortage that has put more pressure on staff, intensifying burnout and leading more teachers to search for an exit ramp. The effect is similar to what employees in corporate America face amid layoffs and the Great Resignation, in which millions of workers have vacated positions amid continuing pandemic fatigue. Okay? A Nation's Education Association poll from earlier this year found 80% of the union's members say job openings have led to more work and obligations, with more than half of members planning to leave education sooner than planned. Nina counts herself among them, hoping to follow in the footsteps of over 300,000 teachers and public school staff who have left the profession since the pandemic. Her reasons are plenty: a lack of trust and support, stress and burnout, contending with historic learning loss, depleting staff. I thought I would be a high school teacher for a while and maybe be a high school teacher on a reservation. But no, Nina says, I don't think it would be good for me to be a high school teacher my whole life. Essentially, every time I'm frustrated with my job, I go on Indeed. The pandemic has made teaching unbearable. Nina moved to the American Southwest, fueled by a desire to work with the Native American population. There, particularly the Navajo Nation. She had goals of teaching Native students. What she found was a school system ravaged by the pandemic. COVID-19 highlighted the exacerbation of inequalities facing Nina's at-risk students and the small charter school where she teaches. When the school went remote, some of her students were stuck at home without a computer for online classes or in environments in which online schooling was virtually impossible. Like many teachers across the country, Nina had to give credit and pass along students who are far behind high school reading levels to the next grade. Broadly, the learning loss for America's children has erased decades of academic progress. What pains Nina more has been the pressure to graduate students who are simply not equipped nor ready to graduate. But what's the alternative? Waste years of their lives by holding them back? It's become untenable for her. Then there's the school administration. She feels patronized, undervalued, and not trusted constantly. She says, and the school is so short-staffed that she's been forced to teach special education classes. They're asking us to do things that are way above our paycheck, says Nina, who holds 2 master's degrees in Native American Studies and American Studies plus 2 bachelor's degrees. I'm not a special education teacher. I am not paid like one. Look for the right next career has become almost a hobby these days, she says. She finds herself drawn to nonprofit work, the political or advocacy sphere, even something still in the education and academia. Anything but teaching. I want to use my skills that I spent so much of my time learning that brought me here to the U.S., Nina says. I came to the U.S. to work with Native American people, and work for environmental rights. It happened for a little bit when I was doing my PhD program, but the pandemic happened and lack of funding happened. So I'm here, feeling stuck with no way out. Okay, teaching can be a comfortable gig. That's what Nina's parents always preached. The time off, the job security, something she doesn't want to get too comfortable though. A colleague of hers has a PhD and told her she started teaching just to pay the bills, but fell into the trap and has been teaching much longer than originally planned. Okay, so you guys see the continuing trope here that basically these people went and spent a whole lot of money to get an easy job, and pretty much they're not getting paid what they thought they were going to be paid. They have all these degrees, which means you're going to have to, for a man, that means you're going to have to do a lot more, and they just don't want to do more. They just want to do the one thing that they went in there to do, and they don't want to really do any more. And, there's just a different view as far as how we would view things like that and how they would view these things. And they're saying, well, now I want to get out, and you have other people who are basically, basically looking for jobs. And these people are wanting to get out because they're saying that, things are kind of too hard for them. They have all these degrees, they put all this money into, getting all of this, and they feel like they're just not recognized the way they want to be recognized, and they're not doing what they want to be doing. I guess it's just not, panning out the way they thought it was going to pan out. So they have this view of what it's going to be like, and if it's not like that, then they want to get out of it. Okay, so. She goes on to say, but Nina is unsure at this point how to navigate such a career change. While she's got 4 degrees under her belt and an expertise that for all intents and purposes exceeds the scope of her current job, Nina's worried that if she waits too long, the PhD she acquired in 2018 will become all but irrelevant. Okay. And she doesn't want to be stuck in an endless job search. A colleague somewhat jokingly told her recently that had been looking for a career change for 15 years. Oh, they'd been looking for a career change for 15 years. I just kind of felt, yeah, I don't want to be her, Nina says. Okay. So workers across the industry have expressed concerns about staying relevant in their work. And skills after the pandemic not only put people behind, but made them reevaluate careers and work life balance. Okay, Nina had her first child during the pandemic, which took a lot of her focus. She says the lockdown and isolation that came with COVID-19 gave her a lot of time to think about what she wants and what's best for her health and career. Okay, so I guess the lockdown basically put a lot of things back into perspective. So it seems like life, and what life is characterized by, all the hustle and bustle, and what people are telling a lot of these women that they should want and what they should have and how they should work and how they should contribute and all these other things. They go and they do these things, and now you're starting to see how unhappy they are once they do all of this stuff. And they want out, but they don't know how life will be if they do get out. So you see all of this turmoil that's kind of within them, and all of this peer pressure that they're having to deal with regarding their jobs and what they put themselves through in order to hold up this, this perception and this costume that they wear, for the sisterhood. So, keep that in mind, And again, she's got all these degrees and she's afraid that they're useless. Okay. So you have a lot of degrees that are pretty much that they're not doing anything for her. They're not making her any more, useful to the labor market. I mean, she's not going to make any more money. She can't really sell herself anymore than if she didn't have it. If she had 1 degree, so, it's really kind of got her bummed out. So, all right. So, and again, you see, she's got a PhD. She's not doing anything with it. She's just got a PhD. Okay. So, all right. So what's best for her health and her career? So then she says she's been turned down for 2 jobs already. One that would have been perfect, she says. She's not deterred though. There's always more frustration at school that pushes her back to the job boards. Fellow Redditors offered advice and guidance in droves, suggesting other potential careers, working with a headhunter, or simply sending encouragement. I'm going to stay as long as I can stay until I find something better. I will not resign, then look for another job. She says, I love the kids. I like my colleagues. They're not my favorite people, but I respect them, and I would have them, and we have a good dynamic. I don't want to be unemployed. I have a baby, and daycare costs just as much rent now, so there's that. Okay, none of that sounds like like she's rock solid, happy where she's at. It's like those are reasons why she better stay where she is. Don't you think? So you have all of this, and then you have a third article where you got people here who don't have, and touching on men who are dropping out of the labor force because they're upset about their social status and the studies that are going on with that. And they're talking about how that, basically affected their marketability, and how they're not making as much money as the people with the college degrees, and how it's affecting every aspect of their lives, from social to professional, and how they dealt with things during COVID, and how things pretty much their lives have changed since then. So you've got a lot of things that have changed as a result of COVID, and AI and education and all of these things, and there's just a lot of things kind of going on that you guys just kind of take a look at all of this, and tell me what you think. Like I said, this is not my forte, but I do have some feelings about the PhD training, and I feel like, especially if you're going to go off into science or teaching or any of that, it's something that you got to be locked on for, and it's something that you almost, we all have to get paid, but that kind of is not what you get into it for, and some people get into it for the wrong reasons. They may get into it to push social agendas, or to, for other reasons that are not good reasons, and if enough of those people get in, they can turn the boat in the wrong direction. So, I wanted to kind of touch on that, especially, and, with, everything that was going on with regard to, supposedly, black men are not trying hard enough. And I think that doesn't acknowledge some of the struggle that happens regarding what happens when you have the capability, but then you have the process, or where you're getting into these these programs, but the programs are not necessarily helping you through. These programs have been historically not very helpful to folks like you. And we already know that structurally, a lot of these schools are just not very good at teaching men, period. And studies are starting to show that that's why men are dropping out, because they are more structured towards teaching girls and not men. And this is becoming a problem. And we're starting to see that that's why these numbers are so large with regard to numbers of women who are in these higher education levels, and the numbers of men are dropping lower, as well as there's so much funding and so much help being pushed towards women to help them to get through. And there's virtually nothing for men, but we're expecting the same outcome as far as equality, but then there's not equality with regard to funding and effort being put towards getting equal numbers of people into these programs to get an equity of ideas, in the system. So, with that being said, you guys let me know what you think. I know this isn't the red meat that you guys like, but this is stuff that makes you think. So, you guys hit the like, share, and subscribe button and the notification button if you like the content. And I will see you guys on the next one.